I was listening to an episode of Stephen Bartlett's podcast called The Diary of a CEO, and he interviews this divorce attorney called James Sexton, and he shares some really powerful insights that really stuck with me, especially around this idea of the relationships falling apart, where it's not because of these big dramatic events, but due to this gradual thing that he calls slippage. I want to share my reaction to this because it ties in so well with what I've seen in my own work. Let's get into this.
The types of people you've represented, is there a certain length of engagement and boyfriend-girlfriend phase that is typically conducive with it working or not working?
No, I don't see that pattern. I'm very fixated on pattern recognition, so I'm constantly thinking, I'm always looking at same religion, different religions, or religious versus non-religious, or older and younger, older man, younger woman, younger man, older woman, like what permutation, same culture, different culture, same races, different races, like first generation to the US, or, both first generation or neither. I don't see those patterns. If I did, I'd be the first to say it. I don't hesitate to say stuff, but I've not seen those patterns. I have found, if I was to say there was any pattern, it really is, I think substance use is probably the main thing. Like that if one or both people are big drinkers or drug users, that's usually a good indication that the marriage is going to lead to divorce, because substance use issues tend to get worse in either both people, which causes all kinds of second-order effects, or more commonly, one person when they have kids or when they reach a slightly different stage in life, scales back on alcohol or drug use, and the other person has an unhealthy relationship with the substances and it gets further down, and that's the direction that it goes in.
I had, you said something earlier which really piqued my interest as well, which kind of relates to this, is you said love is loaned. And I immediately thought of a friend who brought me to a restaurant one day to basically tell me that him and his wife were being divorced. And the way they described it was quite heartbreaking, because it seemed like they had a good relationship. It's kind of like they got busy with their jobs and the kid and they forgot to water the plant.
Yeah.
It's like the only way I can describe it, because they were like good people. They didn't really appear to argue at all.
Yeah.
They had this kid. They're both CEOs. She's a CEO. He's a CEO.
Yeah.
And it's like they raised the kid and forgot to water the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always phrased that as they lost the plot. Like that because when you get married, you're trying to write a story together. And sometimes I think you lose the plot. Like, when you're reading and all of a sudden you stop and you go, I don't really remember where I am in this. And you got to go back a few pages, to oh, okay, I remember this part. Let me start there. I think sometimes we lose the plot. I think that happens in every relationship, every long-term relationship. I think sometimes you lose the plot. Like other things are going on at work, or you have kids, and kids require a tremendous amount of your bandwidth. So I get it. But I think if you lose the plot, that's where it's hard to, it's again, acknowledgement of it, awareness, truth, being honest and saying, hey, I feel like we lost the plot. I feel like there's, we lost the plot. How do we get it back? But the problem is, when you say to your partner, hey, I feel like we kind of lost the plot, rather than hearing that as, hey, this is really important to me. You're really important to me. Yeah, work's important, kid's important, but you and me, that's really important. It's equally, if not more important. So I feel a certain way. I feel like we've lost the plot. And I'm not saying that's your fault. I'm not saying it's my fault. I'm saying it's the kid's fault. I don't know whose fault it is. I don't really care. But I don't want to lose the plot because I care about you. And this story is important to me. People don't hear it that way. People hear it as, we lost the plot. Well, what do you want me to do about it? Okay, so I'll just ignore the kid? What do you want? I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can. And that's not the way to hear that. I understand. I think it's very human to hear it that way. But I genuinely believe that, yeah, it's like you forgot to water the plant. Like, and nobody meant to kill the plant, but you killed the plant because you weren't thinking about the plant. And by the way, plant's right there. You walk past it every single day. You just not once thought, oh yeah, I got to remember to water the plant. And so I think it's very easy in marriage, in long-term relationships, it's very easy to just forget that you're borrowing this. This is not yours. Like, this person's not yours. This person is loaned to you. And by the way, it's the same with death. Like, this person is loaned to you. They could be taken away. By divorce or by death, they could be taken away. Every marriage will end in one of those two things, death or divorce, for sure.
You've used this word slippage before.
Yeah.
When does it happen? And what does slippage mean?
I mean, slippage is, everyone understands slippage, I think. Like, it's not like you eat cake and then the next day your suit doesn't fit. Like, you just make lots of little choices. And those little choices add up and all of a sudden your suit doesn't fit. And you go, wait, when did that happen? And I think it's the same thing in relationships. Like, Ernest Hemingway said in The Sun Also Rises, I went bankrupt the same way anybody does, very slowly and then all at once. And I think that's slippage. Like, it's just little raindrops that eventually become the flood. And I think that's what happens in relationships is you start to, with good intentions, you're focused on other things. Maybe you start to go, hey, I got this. Like, because when you were single, finding the one was big. That was big. That was a big priority in your life. And then you found them. And then there's like a whole bunch of just high-fiving and celebration. And it's like, oh, this is so great. I found the one. You wanted the one too, and you found it. It's me. Is this great? And then you go, all right, we got that. Now what other stuff? What other stuff can we do? Because now, like, I'm supercharged. I got you got me. We're going to do this thing. And you go, and what do? You make new life, or you make careers, or you go amazing places. Like, it's not enough. It's not enough to just go, we got each other and it's so fun and let's just tuck in here and just stay together, And I always laugh with friends, by the way, because I can always tell when someone's like in love because they put on a couple of pounds. Because they really do. Because they just go like, do I want to like get up and go to the gym, or do you go, I like sit on the couch and eat popcorn and watch something? Yeah, let's do that. And it's just sort of like you're just so, it's love weight. It's like happy love weight. And I love when I see it on somebody, like it looks good on everybody. Much better than believe me, like if you look at photos of me from when I had an 8-pack, it was the most miserable time in my life because I'm at the gym just trying to beat the pain out of me, So I think it's very, very normal that people in that headiness of that, okay, so when that fades and now we're like in a sustainable pattern of a relationship and you're focusing on other things, little tiny things start to, and you don't want to make a thing of it. You don't want to say like, oh, by the way, calling a foul here, throwing a flag on that play. No, you just sort of go like, oh no, it's just a little thing. It's not a big thing. Don't worry about it. And I think that is how the process begins, and it leads right to my office someday.
Wow. James talks about how marriages end slowly and then all at once. It's just like going bankrupt, quoting Hemingway. Such a powerful metaphor. In my experience, it's the little unconscious choices that lead to big cracks in a relationship. You get caught up, whether it be life, careers, kids, responsibilities, and we all forget to nurture the relationship itself. Like that analogy of forgetting to water the plant, I think it really nails it. It's not that you meant to neglect your partner. It just happens when your priorities shift. One day you look around and you realize that you're living parallel lives instead of a shared one. That's why being intentional is really key. And relationships require effort and awareness to thrive. Otherwise, those tiny moments of neglect, they end up accumulating. And suddenly you're in a crisis wondering where it all went wrong. He also mentions this idea of how substance use can be a major red flag. That's something I've noticed as well. Like patterns of unhealthy coping mechanisms, they often surface in the form of addiction, and that can destabilize even the strongest foundations. So honestly, this episode is full of gems. I want to know, what do you think about the idea of slippage in relationships?